Welcome to the For the Love of the Game podcast with your host, Jefferson Belfort and Brian Hernandez. Brian, how are you doing?
I am doing awesome. It's been an awesome week of basketball. We have a lot to talk about. There's a lot of new rumors, news, that moratorium of players that just signed the contract is their time is they're now eligible to trade them. So there's a lot of news and rumors coming out, and I'm excited to get into all of it.
They usually say like the juiciest part of the season usually comes around Christmas time, so I'm happy for that too. Or some people will even say the real start of the NBA is Christmas Day. So ready for that. Ready to go over some topics. And some of those topics that we're going to start off this podcast today with is the health and safety protocol and how it's affecting the NBA players in the league right now. Danny Ainge and his new job with the Utah Jazz. Klay and Kyrie's return to basketball, and then a weekly roundup to round up the pod. Ready, Brian?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, perfect. So starting off with the health and safety protocol concerns that is running rampant in the league currently. Obviously, there's a little bit of funky stuff happening all across the league with how these testings are being done. But some things that are glaring and has to be spoken about at this early part of what's going on with the surge of COVID-19 cases throughout the league is that one interesting fact that I saw is that in the first 6 weeks of the season, there was about 16 players that were placed under the health and safety protocol. In about a 2-week span, there's been double that amount of 35 players and coaches that have now missed time. Currently, we're looking at about, I believe, 13, 14, 15, 18 teams that are affected. I did not actually think that it was that much. Last I saw, it was a few teams, but now we're looking at about 18 teams that are affected by this. And then with a few teams that have 4 or more players being affected by that, being the Bulls, the Nets, and the Celtics at this point. And then also the Knicks, actually, with 5 at this point. So, Brian, what do you have to say about this?
Man, it's crazy, and it's actually pretty funny that you mentioned like, oh, at the beginning of the season there's like 16 players or whatever that were affected by this. I remember one of our conversations, like one of the topics we would have during like the weekly roundup is, oh, this player just went into COVID protocols. How do you think it's going to affect the team? Now we're seeing, like you mentioned, we have multiple teams having more than 5 players out. Almost half the league is affected by COVID protocols at the moment. It's pretty crazy to see. And what we're seeing, what I actually find kind of nice to see in some instances of, it's giving players chances. So when teams like the Nets and the Knicks and all these other teams that you mentioned that are missing more than like 5 players, they're able to sign some players to a contract so they can play right away, because you can't just have 8 people on your roster. So it's actually giving some chances to players that are playing well in the G League, some of the players that are further down the bench that are never going to play. And I actually kind of like to see this every once in a while, because specifically I know like players like Jeremy Lin, this is how he got his chance started, not because of COVID protocols, but because at that time the Knicks had multiple injuries. Jeremy Lin was like the 4th point guard off the bench, and yet everyone else was just injured. So he had to start the games, and then he played extremely well. We're seeing right now with the Lakers, we'll talk a little bit more about Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas just came back last night, and he's getting a chance in the NBA again because of COVID protocols. And it's nice to see the little balance, but it's a shame to see like some games on the schedule are going to be affected because of this, and teams that probably wouldn't have lost a game are going to lose. I'm interested to see how this is going to affect, playoff placement and all that. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, so I do like that the NBA has added the hardship exemption where now, yeah, like you said, you could bring up some guys from the G League, but also you could get some of these fringe rotational players that are still out in the market looking for a team for a 10-day contract until you get your guys back, right? But there are some teams that are completely decimated. And luckily, this is early in the season where if it does affect standings, it shouldn't affect it to a point
Yeah.
where you're ultimately outside of where you potentially should be, right? But at the same time, it does become very frustrating because it does not seem like the NBA is looking to have a resolution on what they can do to change this or to help mitigate this. You can't stop COVID. You can't stop COVID cases, right? So I know the NBA can't do that, but there's people around the league, there's reporters around the league throwing it around that NBA should consider taking a break. I think that would not happen when the biggest day, arguably, in the NBA regular season is next week, that they would take a 2 to 3 week period off. But it is glaring that in this short of time, this started to happen, and then it come under question the whole protocol, because I think that the reason why it's gotten to this level is because we saw it first start off with the Bulls, where the Bulls had a massive number of players that were affected. And if you look back at some of the teams that are greatly affected, they cross paths with the Bulls, and they either cross paths with someone that played the Bulls. So it's I'm not saying the Bulls are like the epicenter of this whole thing, but it is glaring to look at what was the league doing to mitigate stuff like this from happening. And it kind of looks like they dropped the ball with some of the testing and how they were doing the testing in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, because like you're saying, at the end of the day, the worst thing that they can do is stop players from playing in the game. So they want these games to continue as much as possible. And it's crazy that it even got to the point with the Bulls that they had to literally just postpone 2 different games that the Bulls had because they just had so many players that were in the COVID protocols. Um, it's it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward because, like you mentioned, there's no shot that they're going to stop the season, postpone the season right before Christmas. So maybe it's going to happen a little bit after Christmas. We'll see how that officially turns out. But yeah, games are getting paused, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward because, like you mentioned, the Christmas games have to go on. They have to continue. But are they going to look maybe starting early January to postpone the game or the season for a week or two to calm things down? Are they going to keep trying to push on and maybe we see numbers rise even more because you mentioned before things are jumping tester people are getting positive tests like crazy right now. And what it seems like is because, I mean, what's happening around the world, numbers are going up in total as well because of the new variant. So we'll see how the NBA handles it. Like you mentioned, I want to see them be more strict with some of these things and actually do something proactive to help the spread of all this. But we'll see.
Yeah, no, and I think that it it is giving, much like you were saying earlier, it is giving way to a lot of young players being able to showcase themselves. There's always the positive and a negative situation, right? So that's the positive in that situation. But let's think about the ticket the ticket buyers, right? The customers, the paying customers that are going to these marquee matchups. When they see that, it's much like with the whole load management situation. When you have a game that is marketed to have players like AD, LeBron, and let's say, God forbid, both of them aren't in the game because of COVID, fans aren't really as apt to go to that game. They're still going to go because it's Staples Center or crypto world now, I'm going to call it. But it still just isn't going to be what people are putting their money together to go see. And I want to know what the NBA will have to say about that. I don't really think that there's really an answer they could provide to that, but I'd love to see if asked what Adam Silver would say about that situation, because it's a bottom line game, right? But the bottom line is affected by your viewership. It is greatly affected by your viewership. So if you are leaving a bad taste with the paying customers, who says what it does to the league and what this protocol could eventually lead to and changes for the league as well.
Yeah, and it's funny that you're mentioning that, like, because we talked offline. Jeff, you're going to a game pretty soon for the Nets. They're hamstringed by all these players on COVID protocol. So you don't want to be seeing. You bought the game because you want to see Kevin Durant, James Harden, and all the rest of your team, Patty Mills, all these guys. I mean, Patty Mills still play, but you don't want to see Langston Galloway and then Shaquille Harrison or whatever that guy's name is at the side. You don't want to see these. Although, like we mentioned, it's great that they're getting opportunities, but that's not why you're there. So, like, you're not watching at that point. It's like, damn, am I even watching the Brooklyn Nets right now? Am I watching the G League team? Like, it's that is kind of a bummer. And I think we even saw it with earlier in the season when the NBA actually suspended some players when they got in altercations, like LeBron and Isaiah Stewart and all that. I know people personally that were going to that Knicks game, the next game that they're reversing the Lakers, and they're like, I've never seen LeBron James in person. I'm so excited to see him in person. And then boom, he's suspended. And then they miss out on the opportunity. So it's sad to see that from the fans' perspective.
And you brought up the Nets, so this is just glaring how crazy it is, because now when you think about it, because like we said, if you have a majority of your team missing out games, there's players that are getting floored right now, right? Because they just had to stay on the field. So the Nets actually are going to sit out a couple players and for this game, and then there's a few players that are game time decision. Yes, they use some of the hardship exemption to bring in, like you said, Shaquille Mason. James Ennis, and Langston Galloway. But when you have 12 guys on your injury report and 7 of them are on COVID protocol, and Kevin Durant's on that list, Patty Mills on that list, Nick Claxton's on that list, David Duke, one of the undrafted rookies on the team, is on that list. You start to say, okay, is there really a basketball team that's actually play this game? Like, so it's glaring, and it is something where you got to think, like, what is, you pay to see the top players.
Yeah.
Love to, if you're at home, I think it's great to see a new guy and see a new guy blossom into something, right? But when you're a paying customer, you go into games, it does suck when you're like you miss out, like you said, with your friends that you paid to see LeBron and that's not what you're getting. No.
Yeah, it's like it's just, yeah, there's two sides to the coin because like I know personally, like if there's a game and there's a blowout happening and it's like, oh man, there's 5 minutes left in this game, I get to see their third stringers and these rookies that they just drafted and they let's see how they potentially do. Now we get to see a lot more minutes of them, and like I even see for the New York Knicks, their 36th pick, Deuce McBride is actually playing extremely well right now, and he's having minutes, but he would have never had these minutes before if people weren't in COVID protocols, and now it even seems Kemba Walker might come back to this rotation for this next game because they're missing all their point guards. Emmanuel quickly just got into COVID protocols, and like it's they need more people, so it's crazy. It's giving these people opportunity, but if you're missing out on the players you paid to see, it's just a shame. So, do you want to move on to our next topic?
Yes, I'm ready to. So we actually spoke about this guy last week, which is interesting. That went from rumors about Portland to next week. He is the CEO and alternate governor of the Utah Jazz. And that guy is Danny Ainge. There's a report from the Boston Globe by Danny Shaughnessy. I'm hoping that I got that right.
It's perfect.
But goes over essentially what led to Danny Ainge exiting after 26 years with the organization, and where he saw himself, and honestly had a couple things to say where he was a little shocked about how his exit about his exit from the Celtics, and how now he is ready for this new opportunity for the Utah Jazz. So he went on to basically ask Danny Ainge like what led to him abruptly being retired, right? Quote unquote retired, right? Danny went on to say that I just felt like I needed a break well before the playoffs started, said Ainge. I also felt like the team was in great hands when I decided to walk, but he didn't think that Brad Stevens would take over that spot. Thought that Brad Stevens would stay in that coaching role. I just wanted to get away from the game for a while. I've done that for 7 months, he says, and he felt ready and energized. A unique opportunity to work with a good friend and Ryan Smith, who is the owner of the Utah Jazz, and that this is a much different role that he has now in Boston. But he also says it's a much lesser role, which kind of perplexed me, but I'll finish the whole quote of what he says. It happened quickly over a period of a couple days when I finally showed a little interest with Ryan. So, what do you make of that, Ryan?
Wow. So I never heard this quote. So I didn't know that he wasn't aware of like Brad Stevens was going to take his job and all this stuff. That's pretty crazy. So it's interesting to me because one, Danny Ainge is kind of talking about burnout and all this kind of stuff, and like he needed to step away from the game. And then you had Brad Stevens. He was also talking about when he was coaching throughout the bubble. He was like, he got so burnt out and he didn't want to be like coaching the team anymore. And as you saw, like that following season, it kind of looked like that, and they performed terribly. And then next thing you know, Brad Stevens is like, "Oh, you trade 3 first-round picks, and for Brad Stevens is a easy trade." Meanwhile, now it's like, "Oh, Brad Stevens, maybe he should get fired and all that." So that's pretty crazy, like that transition. So you can see like how the entire organization kind of was, the people leading the organization, they were also like just kind of tired of it and just needed a break. So that's kind of interesting to see. You mentioned that Danny Ainge and the new owner of the Jazz are actually great friends. So I was listening to Woj talk about him earlier, and they're like, oh, they have a 15 year long friendship that they've had. Danny Ainge already lives in Utah, so it's an easy transition for him to go there as well. And then about the lesser role, from hearing Woj talk about it, Woj is actually saying like that the GM is still the guy that they have. I forget his name. It starts with like an X or something. I don't know, but he's still. Do you know
Get
it?
back to you.
All right.
I'll get back to you with that.
Yeah, so they have that GM already, and they actually really like their GM. But what they want to bring Danny Ainge in for is just to bring in some expertise, bring in those relationships, bring in just an extra helping hand, but not to interfere with this guy's job and take over their current GM's job. And it's really just to add on top of what they already have. And the fact too is it's a different spot. So when we talked about Danny Ainge joining Portland, it was like, ooh, I hate that move because Danny Ainge has to, reconstruct this entire roster, do all these million things and with zero assets to begin with. And that Portland job just kind of seems like a mess to begin with. So as we see, no one's kind of jumping at the helm to take that. But in Utah, it's kind of like, oh, they have a great roster. They have a ton of assets. They have all these things that they don't actually need too much help in. They just need to make maybe a move or two, and they'll feel like they're golden. I mean, they're still, look at what they're doing so far in the West. They're playing extremely well, extremely good basketball. So, what do you think, Jeff?
Yeah. So first, I'll say that the GM, his name is Justin Zanik.
Yeah.
Zanecki or Zanik. So my first thing is I saw the reports about him working, like you were saying, the what Woj reported is that he's going to be working closely with the GM. I don't know how much of a help that's going to be in a situation like this because you have a presence or a personality like that, right? That's going to be weighing very hard on a GM that's, first trying to stake his own claim, make his own name as being a respected GM throughout the league, right? But not only that, he's also weaponized with having that relationship with the owner, which kind of makes it like if Danny Ainge says something, it's gonna go Danny Ainge's way, and that kind of gets me a little scared of the situation. But they put themselves in such a good situation. I don't think there's anything that Danny Ainge could come in there and break right now. But it's what does he do with his new role? What does he expect out of this new role? Being a CEO means that he could step away from the basketball operations and think a little bit more high level on the business operation sides of things and not fixated on just the basketball side of it, right? So hopefully that's the avenue, the way he goes, because I think that then in that situation, it would work for him perfectly. Can throw out advice every now and then to Justin, but he shouldn't force his hand into doing things that he believes he should do.
Yeah. It's
then,
oh no, sorry,
hmm?
keep going.
No, actually, you go because I was gonna use another quote on the
Yeah.
report.
So quickly, you mentioned of like Danny Ainge is, whatever advice or whatever he brings in, like it's probably going to be taken pretty heavily. But like, I'm trying to think like, all right, what kind of advice is Danny Ainge going to give? If is he going to be like, ooh, we're not getting 5 first round picks in this trade? Don't take it. I can't take that. I can't take that. Like, I wonder how that actually plays out. We'll never see the inner workings, but I'm just thinking of like, are we fleecing them or are we getting fleeced? I don't know.
No, I agree. It's funny because I remember there was a story that when the Nets had made the infamous trade with the Celtics, it was going to be considerably smaller. And but Danny Ainge was just so shocked about how well he was about to fleece the Nets. So Danny Ainge went upstairs to tell ownership what the Nets were willing to give for just Paul Pierce at the time. It wasn't for Kevin Garnett at that point. I believe their owner's name is Grossbeck or something like that. That's his last name. But Grossbeck went back to him and said, "Can we get any more from them?" And then Danny Ainge literally went back and asked for more out of Billy King. And Billy King really gave them some more. So, I would see something like that happening, like him just sitting there and go like, how much more can we get?
Yeah.
What do we do before we push the envelope? And they're like, okay, we're done talking about this.
Yeah.
So you do expect them to be. I do think that they'll be a little bit more aggressive with some of the ways that they trade. Because let's be honest, if it's not coming by draft, it's not going to come by free agency for the Jazz. So they got to have a good front on the trade market. I think the team is solid. It's just sad that they're this good in a time where the Warriors look like the Warriors that they are right now.
Yeah.
And the Suns also look like the team that they are currently. So that does make you go like, damn, like what more could they do to separate themselves? Because if they were in the East, they would be the number one seed in the East.
Well, they're actually, it's crazy. So, like you're saying, Golden State is 24-5. Phoenix is 23-5. The Nets are 21-8, and Utah's 20-8. So, like, it's just like these are 4 great seasons, but then there's just like, if you're 4th here on this list, like Utah is, you still have Golden State going crazy. You still have Phoenix going crazy. And Golden State's not even at full power right now. And it's just like, oh my gosh. The Nets aren't even at full power right now. And it's like, man, Utah, you guys are good, but it's unfortunate timing. It's like every other team playing against Michael Jordan. And it's like, all right, there's amazing teams out there, but they have Michael Jordan.
Another interesting quote that was in that piece from Dan from the Boston Globe is that he asked Danny Ainge about why he retired and whether or not he was forced out after being routed by the Nets in the playoffs. So he went on to ask him, just for the record, you pushed out of Boston. Ainge proceeded to laugh and said, "Are you serious? Do you seriously think that? Or is that just like some commentary?" So obviously he brushed that off, but that was a mindset that a lot of people were given. The two things that are big on this piece is we spoke about it a little bit with the Brad Stevens because we saw it as Danny Ainge was grooming or quote unquote groomed him to be in that role, and he's directly saying that's the opposite. And then now one thing that we took as honestly as the truth, as you don't really have to go far to ask anyone and feel that they thought any way differently, but that he was pushed out because, it just wasn't working. And the best way to push him out was to say he retired. And for him to say that's the opposite as well is another glaring thing about this piece. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's I don't know how I feel about it. Even if I buy Danny Ainge like not being forced out, because for years he's been kind of getting pressured because as we keep mentioning, he's never pulled the trigger, and there's all these reports of, oh, he's so close to do this, he's so close to do that. The entire Boston fan base is like, get Danny Ainge out of here. Get Brad Stevens out. Get Danny Ainge out. We hate them both. And meanwhile, like you're saying, I was also expecting like he's grooming Brad Stevens. And it kind of that saying like he wasn't grooming him to be the next GM kind of makes it even more puzzling that Brad Stevens is the GM. Like why are they moving Brad Stevens to this pivotal role? I understand, you want to keep him in the organization still, but it's crazy to see that right now. And wow, Danny Ainge. I'm good. I'm happy for him to be in a better spot than what he was, because it seems like like I was saying it before, everyone in Boston's kind of like burning out. They didn't want to be there anymore. So good that he's in a better position.
You say puzzling. You know what I say? I say that's egregious, because it just goes to show, and we've talked about this early on in the season, about how we were perplexed by some of the decisions that were being made in Boston, right? And it's starting to make you feel that it has to be coming from top, where some of these bad decisions are being made, right? So if you really do appreciate Danny Ainge to the point where he's at, right, or that he is that good at pointing out talent and assessing talent, it is, like I said, egregious that you didn't allow for him to point out what an exit strategy that was for him to retire. Everyone's mindset is that Danny Ainge is walking away from basketball, right? For him to first come back in 7 months shows, first, he was forced out. I don't care what he says, but he was forced out, right? Second, it also says that you guys really did not appreciate his time of being on the team. And what does that say for every other candidate that wants to be a part of that organization? The man has devoted playing and being a part of the organization, the basketball operation sides of things, has been with the organization for over 26 years. For you to not listen and hear out to what his recommendations on his successor should be, have a succession plan that's worked out with him, just shows it just seems so un-Celtics. I don't know why. It just feels so un-Celtics, because you always think about the storied like history about how you go from Red Auerbach to you have a guy like Bill Russell be a player coach at the time. And, all these stories of all these greats that came back and gave back to the organization. And you just clearly just dropped the ball. And I don't know what's going on there. And nothing has, in the last, I would say 2 years, has seemed to make sense with what the Celtics are doing. And it's being reflected on the court. Again, I'll bring this up. The coach has an issue with Marcus Smart. You bring him up to upstairs to be leader of the front office. Come on, like, it just doesn't make any sense with anything that's happening on the Celtics.
I love that you brought up of like Danny Ainge, he leaves, and then 7 months later, boom, I'm back in basketball. I'm back in a new role. And it reminds me of like Daryl Morey, when Daryl Morey is like, I need a mental health break or whatever. I need to be away from basketball. And then literally like weeks later, he's just like, oh yeah, I'm leading the Philadelphia 76ers. Let's go. Like, look at I traded everything that I had in Houston. We have no more assets. We have nothing. Oh, so sad. Now I got everything. I got Embiid. I got Ben Simmons. And I mean, we see how that's going, but it's so funny to like, oh yeah, I need a break. Oh, at least Danny Ainge did actually take a break. Daryl Morey did not take a break. That's what's funny. Oh man. Do you have anything else you want to? Yeah.
Last thing on this, and I wanted to see what you thought about this. Just hearing the nature of how Danny Ainge is talking about this role, I don't know why, but I'm feeling some some comparisons to a Phil Jackson green pastures situation when he became president of the Knicks. And I fear that. I fear that that could be an issue, but luckily he's not touching as much of the basketball side of things, but he's the alternate governor, which means he's an alternate owner, right?
Yeah.
So he has say, he has some pull, he has some clout in the organization. What is he going to do with that? And how do you feel with that comparison?
I think with Phil Jackson, it was actually just like, well, one, they wanted him to coach the team, and Phil Jackson's like, no, I'm not coaching anymore. I'm done with that. And they're like, all right, you're a basketball genius. We've seen you coach teams to championships. You had Michael Jordan and Kobe and all this. Make all the decisions for us. And that's what they kind of did, because they didn't really have like a good GM or anything at the time. So they literally just gave all the power to Phil Jackson. And then that's when he's like, all right, I'm hiring this new coach, triangle offense, everything. And as we saw, that it turned into a disaster. But at least in this situation, what it seems like, it's like, we want you here because you have great experience in this. We value your opinion. You're a good friend of the owner, and just help out the guy that's already doing the job and just provide some advice. So not as hands-on, but so that's where I can see like the two differences in that situation.
All right. Well, I'll keep a close eye on it and see what goes on. But,
we'll see. If Danny Ainge wants to make some big decisions, then 100% I'd agree on like he's becoming Phil Jackson there. But as of now, we have to see what he does first. So do you want to move on to Kyrie Irving coming back and Klay Thompson coming back?
I am so ready for that conversation.
Do you want to break it down?
Yeah. So first we'll start off with Klay. Klay was actually scheduled from the beginning of the season. We've been hearing the rumors and the rumblings that Klay would be fully integrated back to the team by Christmas Day, possibly make his return on Christmas Day. But that's not, as of reports from Woj from yesterday, actually, that is not the case. And he'll actually be looking to pick up his game and start playing in early January, shooting around the timetable of January 9th to the 18th. And we'll see. We'll see what that looks like for him. But I am a little, I wouldn't say worried, but definitely wondering what may have been a concern to why they decided to push back. I know a little bit of reports are saying, and Woj reporting is saying that it's conditioning and trying to ramp him up. But I'm sure Klay has been ramping up the last couple months, and conditioning. I don't know. In my idea, I didn't think it would take that long for him, knowing from where he's been since the beginning of the season and how much he wants to get back on the court, that conditioning could take another month, honestly, almost another full month until he's back on the court.
Yeah, it is kind of like, it doesn't seem like it adds up 100%, but like it's kind of close because, like you're mentioning, they want the earlier reports before the season started, maybe late November, maybe early December, and then it goes Christmas, and then now it's one of these January home games. So they're looking at January 8th, or it's the January 9th or the January 18th. So these are the two games that they're really considering heavily to bring him back. And it's like, if you're trying to bring him back the 9th or the 18th, it's the 18th right now. So you're trying to potentially push him back another month. It shouldn't take him a month to get back in conditioning shape, right? I mean, I guess I'm not an expert, but what was also mentioned he's currently playing some scrimmages with the G League team, And he's done 3, and he's looked great, and he's doing all this stuff. And this is mainly on Klay Thompson wanting to be in perfect shape, so when he comes back, he's the best that he can be. But it's like, is there really any better conditioning than like playing in some real games? Maybe play him out there for 5-10 minutes, get his feet wet, do this stuff, bring him back slowly, rather than, all right, I can play 20-30 minutes again, no problem. So that's, to me, that it's kind of fishy. And I'd expected him to be a lot further along than he is right now. What do you think, Jeff?
First, it does on the side of the Warriors, it shows a level of concern, and it shows a level of being as precautious as they possibly can. Warriors, even though we don't ever talk about this anymore, but the Warriors know that there's a blemish on their name for supposedly bringing KD back in sooner rather than later, right? And because of that, I know that the Warriors now are always taking precaution with whatever decision they make with their players, right? But then that gives way into what I was going to say next. Klay hasn't played since Game 6 of the 2019 Finals, right? That is over a total of nearly 900 days. Kevin Durant sat out 552 days. Both of them had a prolonged time of sitting out, right? One is arguably the greatest player in the league, right? One is one of the best players in the league. But not only did he sit out for one injury, he sat out for 2. So I think that a lot of what is going on right now is not about Klay's physical game, and it will never be about Klay's physical game. It's about getting him in the right mindset to be ready to play this game. And I think that that's probably the last part of his, not conditioning, but his rehab of getting mentally back into, I could do this. It's not going to happen again. This injury, I'm beyond this. I put it in the back of me now. Like, I don't have to worry about it anymore. I'm going to do my best in everything that I do. Right. So I think that that's a big part of why Klay we haven't seen him on the court yet. But like I said, with Kevin Durant, it's a whole different ball game piece. The guy has always felt that he's the best guy on the court, right? So that type of confidence, I don't know if that ever wavers when you have that. And then for added confidence is, you get injured like that, and then you get a super max, or you get the max payout that same summer. So, what I mean? Like, it just goes to show that he has a level. It has to be a level of where's his confidence at, and where's that playing a part in the decision for him not playing at.
Yeah, I think it's one to touch on your point of the confidence thing. I think it was, I forget his exact name, but it's something Grover, that Michael Jordan's old trainer. And he talked about, like, whenever he would start rehabbing with a player after an injury, like a lower body injury or something like that, what he make them do is like climb onto something high and then jump from it and land. And like, even something like that was such a hard mental thing to get over for some players, because like you're saying, like, if you're jumping, you're landing on yourself, on your legs all the time. Like, is this going to happen again? And I wonder if there's anything like that for him. I mean, I actually believe like Klay Thompson's still like, I'm one of the best shooters, like top 3 of all time. That's what I believe. He has that confidence there, but I wonder, but with the rest of his game, if he still has that confidence. With Klay Thompson not coming back, something I actually also want to bring up was the Warriors actually, at the moment, they don't need him. So there's a big difference between, if the Warriors were on a fringe 8 seed right now, their season's not going as well. But since their season's going as well, that could be the reason why they are pushing his timetable back further and further. It's all right, let's get you 100%. We know 110% you are good to go, rather than, you're ready, you seem healthy, you say you're healthy, let's play you some games because we need to win some games. They just don't need him at the moment. So I can see why that's why they're being super precautious. But yeah, I personally still have confidence that Klay Thompson is going to come back and be at least 80-90% of the player that he was. What do you think?
Yeah, I believe that as well. The only reason why I brought up what I brought up is, I remember that game that he sat out. He sat on the court for up to 30 minutes after the game, just like had to come back and console him and stuff. Like, like it definitely is a mental part of this that is playing into the situation. But, I know Klay is one to kind of be open about his stuff and have a good time. You can see that clearly through a lot of the social media and stuff that he does on social media. But at the same time, everybody's going through something, and it is definitely something that affects you when your whole livelihood, your whole career is hanging on the balance of how you come back, right? So I think he is going to come back like the Klay that we saw before, and we're not going to see an issue like you mentioned.
Yeah, I love that stat that you brought up though, of like Klay missing almost 1,000 games, and then Kevin Durant 500 or days, not games. That's pretty crazy to see of just how fast Kevin Durant came back, and then how well he's been doing this entire time, and it really seems like the Nets are kind of doing it like the right thing. Of when he came back, certain games he's not playing every single game, but he's still there. He's still with the team, still playing. I'm sure he's still practicing and all this stuff. And so far, I mean, Kevin Durant's playing at the moment the highest his minutes total has been in a long time. And
I believe
look what he's
since 2013-14 was the reports that I saw. So
doing.
was his MVP season.
Yeah.
So he's in the conversation for MVP.
For sure.
This is not a conversation, a topic for today, but I do think that we should give a lot more respect to what he's doing at this advanced stage in his career after what he went through and for what he went through. It's not that he sat out those games, it's what he sat out those games from. This is an injury everyone universally, it's been told that this is the type of injury that no one comes back from. Yep. So to see him go into this level of play is remarkable. But I'm going to let it segue into what the next person that we're going to speak of is, much like you were saying, is that Kevin Durant is picking up a lot of minutes. And because Kevin Durant is picking up a lot of minutes, and because the Nets are dealing with an enormous amount of players that are sitting out because of the COVID protocols, the Brooklyn Nets have decided to revise and look over a decision of whether or not to give Kyrie or grant Kyrie the ability to play part-time. And the Nets find, after having conversations with the team, with ownership, with the GM, that it was in their best interest at this time to bring back and reinstate Kyrie Irving. But only the beginning of the peaks. There's still a lot of stuff that Kyrie has to prove to get back onto the court. The Nets' next road game would be on December 23rd, which is about 5 days. There's reports from Scoop B. There's reports also from my good friend Scoop B that Kyrie already has started working his way into getting tested at the organization, with the organization. And if Kyrie is able to provide 5 negative tests, he will be able to be be able to come back to the team. And from that point on, he will have to be tested daily to remain with the team and be able to play in those road games. So we could potentially see, and I think it's a long shot for him to potentially start in that game against Trailblazers on the 23rd, but we could potentially see Kyrie as early as the 25th on Christmas playing his good friend LeBron James. So what do you think about that, Brian, and the Nets' decision making on this one?
I think at the moment, like you're mentioning, with all these injuries, Kevin Durant playing all these minutes, it's kind of it's necessary. It's what they kind of have to do, because if, let's say, Kyrie comes back and he plays in a game, it kind of gives the Nets, not saying that they're going to do this, but it gives them the flexibility of what they did last year of, all right, now Kevin Durant can rest this game. We have James Harden and Kyrie playing, so we don't need Kevin Durant currently. And like, they're able to do some stuff like that and give some of their stars more rest. What I did kind of find interesting is that Woj said that the Nets haven't seen Kyrie play this whole time, which, I mean, I guess kind of makes sense, because where are they going to see him play? And then, but they just don't know what kind of condition that he's currently in. So they have to see all that, see how he's going to play. And something that I also found interesting that I heard, I didn't confirm it myself, but I heard that there's only 24 games on the schedule that's left that Kyrie's actually eligible to play. Because, he's not able to play home games because of the COVID restrictions in New York. So he's not able to play even away games in New York. And then as well, right now, what we talked about last week with Toronto, he's not able to play those games. So there's only 24 games left that he's eligible to play. I'm excited to see Kyrie Irving play basketball again. He's one of the most special talents in the NBA currently. So it's been a shame that he's been sitting this entire season. I also have him on one of my fantasy teams, so I want to see him come back. And then I wanted to ask you, though, did you think it was the right decision for the Nets to, at the start of the season, say we don't want him to only play part-time? And what do you think? So what do you think about that?
I believe that it was the best decision. I think on the record, actually, I said it.
Yeah.
Early in the season that was the best decision. It's just now it kind of looks a little screwy. Acquiesce to his request this part of the season. It looks a lot better because the Nets are not bottom dwellers as they do this. But it is a little funky that they decided to acquiesce to his request, and give him what he wanted, and so to speak, in that sense. But it gives light to some of the things that, and I know we've discussed this book before. I believe it was Matt Sullivan that wrote the book about how essentially the Nets are a protocol, or maybe even a cautionary tale of what a player-driven culture in basketball is being created in Brooklyn right now, and might start to percolate throughout the league, is allowing these players to make these type of decisions that affect everyone and affect the organization greatly, right? So I'm wondering, where in the conversation did Sean Marks essentially say, I need to put my foot down early parts of this? And then, what part did the players, and I'm speaking of the power brokers, the ones that wield the real power, right? The Hardens and the Kevin Durant came and said, you know what, I think it's time to start relooking or rethinking. Maybe we should bring Kyrie back. And if that's actually something, or a conversation that they had and brainstormed with their players. So Matt Sullivan openly said that all of those decisions go by those players. So he wouldn't be surprised when something happens that those players don't know, that they do know. They wouldn't go without knowing. So I'm sure the same was made with this decision. And at this point, we all know that when a report comes out, and usually if it's from a credible source, it's out because someone wanted it to be out, right?
Yep.
So when we started hearing the rumblings of optimism that he would return, it's crazy that it's been under a week since that report was put out and that Kyrie's already in talks to be back. So
yeah,
that's how I feel about it, honestly.
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair. I'm excited to see him back. What I did find very funny, I personally never thought that Kyrie and Klay Thompson would be playing a basketball game before Ben Simmons, and that's what it's looking like it's happening. And it's pretty. So one of my fantasy basketball teams, I have all three of these guys on my bench just sitting because I was pretty optimistic. I thought Ben Simmons was coming back maybe like after the first month of basketball, and I thought there's a good chance for Kyrie to come back because on one thing just needs to change. He needs to get vaccinated. I mean, still not, but still he's going to be playing games now. And then Klay Thompson, it was always kind of like this. I was hoping for late November, but I was expecting January or December, and now we're getting January. But still, I've never thought that those two guys will play an NBA game before Ben Simmons.
Ridiculous. It is honestly ridiculous
Crazy.
that this saga with Ben Simmons continue. We don't get it as much rumblings, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we still are here sitting and waiting for a resolution in that situation, and it makes me a little, like I think I said it last week or week before that, is that it was gonna get weird. It's gonna get weird because you got Daryl Morey on top, so I'm not expecting this to be something that we sweep under the rug. This is very well going to be a full season saga of wondering what's going to happen to Ben Simmons. And it's not fair to the Philadelphia fans that, respect the game and the side of what Ben Simmons brings and how he plays, but also they respect what their front office is able to give to them. Granted, not really a big fan of Philly, but at the same time, they respect their players. They really do. Yeah. So so to speak, Daryl Morey to hold them hostage in this sense and not make a trade where you got to take out that malignant force is a kind of fireable offense in my mind, because it should not be this long. And you wouldn't leave a bag of dog remains in the middle of the room. That's the same thing that I'm seeing to happen right here. You're leaving the situation as is, and it's not smelling good right now.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. I guess this is a good transition to go into a news roundup, because I did have some news on Ben Simmons. And so some of the news that I have for Ben Simmons was on the latest was that the Lakers, the Knicks, the Blazers, Pacers, Timberwolves, Cavs, and the Kings, these are all teams that are interested in trading for Ben Simmons. And then to add on top of that, the Lakers actually are not really going to be in the race because Philly not interested in Westbrook. They don't want Westbrook, so they don't really have anything else to add to this trade. But what do you think about these teams for Ben Simmons potentially? I can name them again.
It is crazy. It's crazy and funny to think, and I don't know if anyone was thinking about this when they heard this, to think that the Lakers thought they were going to unload a player that Daryl Morey said no to, like that he didn't even want to get, but was kind of forced to by James Harden in the first place. And then you think a second time around, he was going to say, let's bring him back. Let's run it back. I don't know what the Lakers was thinking. It's showing, like I've said from the beginning, There's a little bit of delusion that's coming up from Rob Pelinka being the GM. I have not liked what he's done as a GM. I don't like the present construction of the team that he provided for an aging LeBron and an injury-prone AD. And you know, like, reap what you sow, right? You chose those players, and now you're going to have to deal with those situations. Granted, Lakers are on an upswing. They've been winning some games lately, and they're over 500 currently now. But Lakers should not be 2 games over 500 in this part of the season.
Yeah.
We were thinking they were going to be closer to the top half of the West. And, you know, it'll be sad to see the Lakers go out into the first round and lose potentially to a team like the Warriors because they stay in a position like, hypothetically, if they stay around 7 and 8, that's who they will play.
Yeah. I expected the Lakers to be still good. I didn't expect them to be like where they are now. I expected them to be probably around where like Utah is right now. So like they're still good, but there's better teams there. But it's crazy to see that. What I did find funny is still thinking about that report about Ben Simmons in Philly. In Philly is like, we have a list of like 25 players or so that these are the only players we'll trade for Ben Simmons. And looking at these teams, there's kind of, I don't know where this player comes from because, well, one, Lakers, no. They're not. Anthony Davis or LeBron, those guys are probably on the list. That's not happening. For the Knicks, they don't really have anyone that maybe the closest person they'd have on that list is Julius Randle, but how he's playing this season, he's not even close to there. And I think they can't even trade Julius Randle to like February or something like that because he just signed that extension. The Blazers are not trading Dame, so that's off the table. The Pacers, I guess the closest player you have there is Sabonis. Maybe if you add Sabonis and Karras, I don't know how the money works, but I don't know what that is. The Timberwolves, Karl-Anthony Towns is probably that guy on that list, but they're not gonna. They don't want to pair Joel Embiid and Towns, and also the Timberwolves. I think I mentioned they're not trading Towns as of now. The Cavs, the best player is Evan Mobley. I don't think they want to trade him, and then the Kings. De'Aaron Fox, maybe he's on that list, maybe he's not. De'Aaron Fox is having a pretty bad year. So overall, we heard trade talks are progressing. I don't know where they're progressing from. I don't know how this has happened. And it really seems like this trade's not going to happen.
It sounds like a little bit of media manipulation happening right now. Yeah. The only way this is progressing, it's like he's progressing to picking up the phone. That's probably what he's progressing to finally dial GM numbers. Because right now, every situation, every team that we considered that they could trade with has a flaw in what the Sixers would want coming back, right? And then you have a guy that is incredibly overvaluing the talent.
Yeah.
What do you expect that guy is going to get back? Like, you know, or want to get back? That's what makes me fearful that this is just going to keep on. There's going to be a point where we see the trade happen, and what we see come back to the Sixers is going to be so undervalued because time is the major determinant of what type of asset you get back in the powers of leverage you hold, right? So the more and more we hold off, the more and more we figure out, and teams figure out, well, no one's actually calling them. No one's offering them anything. Everyone's going to call Daryl Morey's bluff. And you got teams like we speak about, they don't want CJ McCollum, right? Going to be a moment where that's all they're going to be offered is CJ McCollum if they continue to go down the route that they're going. I wanted to bring up another thing too, is because it's funny, there's a couple teams that you said on that list, but for the betting favorites of who's going to get them, it's still the Blazers at number 1 with 7 out of 4. Pacers is coming up at number 2 out of 2 out of 1. And then Pelicans, which is an interesting one that we haven't heard But I want to dive in a little bit, see what we could maybe make our own mock trade right now and say what that would look like. And are sitting at 5/2, then the Knicks at 3/1, and then the Celtics and the Lakers rounding it up respectively 5/1 and then 7/1. So
Wow.
those are the teams that they believe really have the realest chances of getting Ben Simmons. But I honestly am interested by the Pelicans one. What type of package do you see coming their way?
What I see, so that's kind of fun. Well, one, I think it's funny that the Blazers are the betting favorites. I personally, I don't see that at all. I see there's probably like a 5% chance that he goes to the Blazers. We'll see what happens. But with the Pelicans, I'd say it'd probably be Zion, if anything. Would the Sixers want Zion? I don't know. It's a different question. But I'd say that's the only thing, because you don't, or one, Zion has all these injuries and all this weight, and then all this potentially him wanting to leave eventually, and his family's not happy. There's so much drama there with the Pelicans and Zion that I think it's kind of a when, not if. So, like, I think he is going to leave the Pelicans eventually. It's just that I can maybe see the Sixers doing that if they want to deal with all the injuries like they already have with Joel Embiid. If they think those two could play in the post together, because Zion, he could shoot some threes, but you really want Zion in the post, so you want two big bodies down there. I think it had to be something like that, and then you throw on some like Steven Adams or some contract they want to get rid of.
Actually, I think I have one that I think could work for both sides, right?
Steven Adams is on the Grizzlies, right?
He's on the Grizzlies.
I'm thinking
now,
Jonas. I'm thinking of Jonas. All right, there you
go. That will actually be a good piece. I think he will be someone that is shopped around during the trade deadline. But I have an interesting one that I thought could be paired together and see how does the money work in getting Ben Simmons down there, right?
Okay.
I was thinking you send Ben Simmons, you send Tobias Harris. So because let's be honest, the Tobias Harris experiment is starting to fizzle out. And you get back a BI. I don't know if Graham is eligible to be traded now. I know he signed with them this season. So you put a package around those two guys. You got two younger guys, two guys that look pretty good at what they do. And then, like you said, throw a couple pieces together. I think the salaries could be a little bit of the issue there because of how incredibly paid those two guys on the Sixers are.
Yeah.
I think Tobias needs a fresh start. He needs to be somewhere where the pressure is off of him a little bit. Ben Simmons, if Tobias needs a fresh start, Ben Simmons needs like 30 fresh starts. So, so that would be a perfect for them. And then being paired with Zion, I don't know 100% if it works, but I would love to see what the experiment would look like. Those two type of players, see a potential of the lanes being clogged with those two type of players, but at the same time, I'm ready to see an experiment, man. And I want to see an experiment happen for the Pelicans where, even if it fails, they tried it out, And then for the Sixers side of things, they get young, they get a couple contracts off the books, and then they could be in free agency talks for the next upcoming years of players that do come up.
Yeah, I love the fit of Brandon Ingram in Philly. The main reason why I didn't want to add him is because of like that logjam and that fit of Zion and Ben Simmons, because we saw with what worked well with Zion, point Zion. It seemed like the Pelicans really liked point Zion. So now if you had Ben Simmons that kind of defeats that purpose. What it seems like to me, whatever team that Ben Simmons goes to, the best fit for him is kind of in a situation similar to what Giannis has. Of you have one person that dribbles the ball, that's Ben Simmons, and then everyone else in the team can shoot. And Ben Simmons is able to drive to the lane and pass it to somebody else. Until Ben Simmons can actually shoot himself, maybe that changes. But I think that's probably the best situation. So we already see of like Ben Simmons working with somebody that also is post dominant in Joel Embiid, like not the greatest fit. And you don't want to put Zion shooting 3-pointers the entire time. So that's where I see. I think it's worth an experiment. Hey, something needs to change there. They need to get more assets. Brandon Ingram's playing well. Brandon Ingram's a good player, but I don't know. Take a risk. Do something. What's their GM's name again? David Griffin.
Oh yeah, David Griffin.
David Griffin needs to do something, or his career is just down the toilet.
Yeah, I think this might be the last year of him in New Orleans.
I think so
I don't. He could pull off the greatest heist, and I think this is still the end of his time in New Orleans.
Yeah, he needs to do something, but I think he's done. Let's move on quickly. Rapid fire. Here's some news that we have. So one, Isaiah Thomas. We mentioned a little bit earlier. Back in the NBA, 10-day contract. Jeff, what do you think about Isaiah Thomas back on the Lakers?
Happy to see him back in the league, but I love to see there's camaraderie throughout the NBA force with the players, loving each other and wanting to see one of their colleagues back in the game. But let's be honest, is that as much as Isaiah Thomas is a great offensive talent, he's a defensive liability. Yep. On the court, being at the height that he's at, and he really cannot guard beyond what is, let's say, the one. And as we see now, the one can be a 6'8" player. So it's the nature of what the game is right now. It sucks, but I don't think it's going to last too long.
Yeah, very similar situation where we see with Kemba Walker of, the guy can still do some stuff on offense, but honestly on defense, he's such a liability. And there is a reason why Isaiah Thomas hasn't really gotten the chance back. I'd love to see how he does. He played a good first game. They lost anyway, but we'll see how they move going forward. Sabonis for the Pacers officially requested a trade. So we heard a few weeks back, Pacers are going to be looking to trade these guys, Miles Turner, Karis LeVert, and Sabonis. Miles Turner came out, said, yes, I need a fresh start. Sabonis now, yes, get me out of here. I want a fresh start. To add on top of this, the Kings and the Suns have some interest in Sabonis. What do you think, Jeff?
Oh, I really hope he crosses his fingers and hopes that the Suns pick him up, because I think that Sabonis is exactly what the Suns are missing. We saw it in the finals. Their biggest deficiency when they were playing the Bucks was having that alternate big man to come into the game with in switch time and split time with Ayton when he left the court. And you saw Suns tried to make up with Frank Kaminsky. I can't say names today, but Frank Kaminsky was doing some of that backup play, right? I don't think he's going to be a backup player, but I think that a lot of those minutes when Ayton's not on the court, Sabonis could pick them up, right? And I think that was the difference of why they lost that series last year. It's because he became such a target for the Bucks to exploit. So you get a guy like Sabonis that can pass, that can shoot, that can defend as well, but not at an elite level, but he shows effort. You are almost sticking your face into being perennial Western Conference contenders,
Yeah.
champion.
If they do that, I might. I don't know if I move them up to the favorites. I still have to see how Klay Thompson comes back, but I think they're right there if the Suns are able to get Sabonis. I think Sabonis is a very good player. He's well, last year him and Julius Randle, to me I see them as very comparable players. And then this year Julius Randle fell off a cliff, and Sabonis is still playing pretty decently well. Um, I think that's an amazing fit for them. What I did also see is that the Kings are trying to package Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley for an all-star level talent. Sabonis is an all-star level talent. They're looking they're one of the teams interested in linked to Sabonis. So that's probably what the Kings are going to try to offer to try to get Sabonis. What do you think about that offer?
I don't think it pushes the envelope. I really don't. It may be better packaged than what
Yeah.
the Suns may be willing to send. So it could be the trade that gets it done. But it goes back to what we said last week is we're going to sit here and go like, oh, Malcolm, still here. That is going to be the situation when you decide to do that. So, it's Buddy Hield is not really an on ball. He's not crazy on ball, right?
Yeah.
But I think that they would relegate a player like that to have the ball a little bit more than they would Malcolm Brogdon. I think in the time that we've seen him play, I think he would benefit from seeing the ball a little bit more.
Yeah. No, I like to see it. Right now, I say probably the Kings are my favorites to get Sabonis. We'll see what happens. We'll see what other trade packages are out there. But next, Lakers and the Blazers. Lakers are pretty linked to like every single trade. The Lakers and Blazers are interested in trading for Jeremy Grant, and this is from Shams. What do you think?
Jeremy's coming off an injury, so it's kind of like okay, but I once again, Lakers have no assets, so it's almost like the guy that always talks about like, oh, I could have been with her, I could have been with her, but you didn't. You weren't with her, so I don't care of you explaining to everybody that you could be with her, right? It's the same thing I feel about the Lakers, right? Is they're going to be in conversation with every single person.
Oh,
Will they get someone? They might get one person, right? Or one or two people, right? But they're not going to get in with the people that are hot that they're linked to. And Jeremy Grant, what he's done in his time on the Pistons, I don't think that he's gonna get moved for anything on what the Lakers have on their team right now. I don't know. Maybe AR-15 is the one that gets the trade done.
Yeah, I don't see what the Lakers can really do. We'll see. I like Jeremy Grant moving to a different team though, even though he wanted to go specifically to the Pistons because he really enjoyed. He liked the ownership. He liked what they're doing over there. He wanted to be that guy over there. But then they got the number one pick, and then now Cade Cunningham is that guy. So, and they're still trying to rebuild. Jeremy Grant, like you can get some good draft aspects or draft assets for Jeremy Grant. So we'll see how this progresses. Next, Celtics are listening to trade offers for Dennis Schroeder. What do you think?
Oh, Dennis. I guess the Celtics realized that they're just going to be middle of the pack this year. Another thing that we talked about early in the season. And because of that, I think it is in their best interest to offload pieces that you don't see long-term being there and see what type of value you get back. I don't know what you're netting from that. I think, no disrespect to Schroeder, but the best you're getting is an unprotected second-round pick and a fringe player is the package that I think Dennis Schroeder gets you right now. Or, on the high end of it, a lottery-protected pick and, like I said, fringe rotation player for Dennis Schroeder at this point.
Yeah, I don't know what the Celtics are really trying to do here because are they trying to just say the season's over? Are they trying to, upgrade from Dennis? He's having a solid season. I mean, he's 17 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, shooting 33% from three. Like, not the greatest, but I mean, it's a solid season. I just, what are they trying to do here? That's the thing, and I have no idea.
And I think that goes back to like what we were talking about last week as well too, with the culture of winning, right? What
Yeah,
is he impacting to for the Celtics in winning, right? Obviously, they have advanced analytics that they're looking at. They're
yeah,
probably piecing into it that he is possibly, and I can't speak on fact because I didn't do the research on this one right here. Is he probably isn't the highest on win shares for the team,
sure.
and that's directly impacting what they see. Hey, is this a long term fit? If there is a chance to trade him, we should consider it. If he plays the play he's playing, I'm happy with that. But if there's a way to offload him and get assets back, I'm happy with that as well.
I agree. Next, Hawks are seeking a first round pick in any trade for Cam Reddish. Do you think Cam Reddish is worth a first round pick?
See, I've been seeing this for a little while now.
Yeah.
That was my pick for most improved player this year. Unfortunately, he's not. He's injured first,
Yeah.
and he's just not getting the respect from I think from the Hawks that he deserves in this situation. The Hawks put themselves in a really good situation where they have a lot of integral pieces that they believe will be a big part of their future, but I don't think they're going to garnish a first round pick or Cam Reddish at this point because of how they valued him. It's
Yeah.
not as much of what other teams have valued him. They've relegated him to being a backup player. He had the starting role at a time. They gave it to Hunter. Obviously, Hunter's injured as well right now, and that's why Lualu Caparo is starting. But you went from him being the starter to him being on the bench. It's really hard to pick up the value and like pick up the phone and listen to the GMs and have GMs go to you and say, "Hey, you were the guys that made this value out of him. We didn't put this on him."
Yeah.
But maybe he does. Maybe they do find a first round pick, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I actually agree because, well, one, a healthy Cam Reddish is 100% worth a first round pick, but it's just how healthy is Cam Reddish? He's been injured pretty much his entire career so far. And if he does get healthy, like I say, but he's 100% worth it, but you're going to pay a first round pick for a guy that's not going to play in your team and it's going to play half of the games or something like that. Not necessarily worth it. Worth a protected first round pick, maybe. If you had a pick in like around the 20s or so, then yeah, I think it's worth a shot to take a flyer on Cam Reddish. But uh, yeah, we'll see how that goes. Next, several teams have called the Knicks about Kevin Knox, the man that was picked above Shea Gilgis Alexander, the man that was picked above Mikal Bridges and Miles Bridges, the legend Kevin Knox. What do you think?
Me and my man Fortnite. We had off night. Now we got Fortnite. But
Oh man.
he's been a dog pound for months, honestly. Like you barely
Yeah.
see him play. I do think that the guy does. We talked about fresh starts. That might be the theme for today.
Yeah.
He needs a fresh start. I would love to see him being given a chance at least to showcase what he has. He hasn't been given that chance the last 2 years. Since last year, the beginning
Yeah.
of last year, he hasn't been given that chance.
Yeah, he's Kevin Knox is an interesting guy. He had I think I've talked about it before. He actually has a lot of talent. His problem for him, in my opinion, is confidence. He just has zero confidence and um He's actually also a decent shooter. We call it on the Knicks. Knicks fans call him corner boy Kev because you put him in the corner, he makes those threes all the time. He's actually really good, but the man can't play defense for his life. He is so bad on defense, and he makes a lot of boneheaded decisions. And if you can't play defense on the Knicks, you're going to be on the bench the entire time. Recently, he's been getting more minutes because of all these COVID protocols, and he's looked solid. So I'm interested to see. I mean, it makes sense why teams are kind of interested in him. They're not gonna give much for him. Maybe like 2 second-round picks is like Kevin Knox's ceiling. But like you said, he deserves a fresh start. I think he could do something better somewhere else, and when he gets some playing time.
And then you did bring up confidence, so I wanted to finish off on that.
Yeah,
I still only 22. He's still just 22.
Yeah,
a lot of career left if he's given the opportunity. I think he does just need to be given a chance.
Yeah, and that's the thing about like confidence too. Like I can't blame him for not having the confidence because like he gets drafted. He was the youngest person in his draft. He gets drafted at like 18 years old. He's coming in New York and he's playing against the biggest names all the time. The New York fan base always has giant expectations for their players, and it's just like I can only imagine. And he plays a lot of Fortnite and all this kind of stuff. I can only imagine like, all right, I'm coming in here, 18 years old. I have my Fortnite suit on, and now I have to play against LeBron James. Like, oh, I don't belong here, kind of thing. And that's the kind of mentality he's had. He's actually a very hard worker. Following him these last couple of years, it's just that to me, it's really the confidence. So next, this is about Miles Turner. So the Lakers and Pacers have actually discussed Miles Turner to the Lakers. Again, Jeff, what do you think about the Lakers' chances of getting Miles Turner?
Must I say it again? They're literally, like I said, being linked with all the hot commodities out there. But do I think they get any of them? I don't think so. Yeah. So with the Miles Turner, what are they moving? What are they moving to Pacers that makes them go like, no, this is great for us? I would love to hope that the Pacers are not that incompetent to take back a situation where you have Russell Westbrook coming to your team. I also am perplexed by where does Miles Turner fit into the Lakers when you have AD? They play the same role. and Miles Turner already has told you, I'm not coming to be thought of as a role player. I'm not coming up, which means to me, I'm not coming off no bench to play for any team. I'm looking to become a starter, and I want to show why I'm a starter.
Yeah, I think well said. I'm not going to add anything else on there. That is this is just like nothing new, which is pretty funny. The last thing on the Lakers though is that your boy Rob Pelinka, he's over here. He's hearing trade talks about our trade interest for Talen Horton-Tucker, and as many as 7 teams are interested in Talen Horton-Tucker. But right now, the consensus is it's going to take a lot to get this guy. What do you think about this?
I don't understand. And, I know as a fan base, you get a little delusional about certain players. For the Nets, It was Karis LeVert for some time. For the Knicks, it was Mitchell Robinson for some time. Mm-hmm. There's just guys that, you have like a heart cord that's being tugged when they bring up this player in a trade or something like that, right? THT is exactly that for the Lakers. I do not understand the obsession with the guy. I understand he's a good value player, but the reason why he's in the position that he is and why a lot of the players in the NBA do not make that jump from being a rotation player to a good player to being a starter to being a star is consistency. THT is not consistently providing what everyone is expecting out of a player. And if you want me to unload players that have potential, are equal potential, are better potential than THT, you have to show me that THT can do this on a consistent level. I don't, you know what? Let me take some time to look at what his stats look like right now, because I honestly don't genuinely understand what is the obsession with him. Because when like I said, I pull up the numbers right now. Guy is shooting around 40% from the field right now, 27% from three. He's got 11 points. He's playing 30 minutes a game, has close to 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal a game, and a block. I know sometimes we say stats don't tell the full story, but the stats are showing me that the guy is pretty inconsistent. When you can have a night where you have 19 against the Magic, and then 2 weeks before or a couple days before, you only had two points. So, and you played 16 minutes. Like, you know, it just goes to show, like, the guy's just inconsistent for me to say that this is someone I want to trade for.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you're saying of like having that hometown bias of you watch the guy every game and you see there is a lot of potential here. And, he shows these flashes. So when he shows these flashes and you see the potential, you're like, this is where he's going to be at all times. So this is where you should value him. But like you're saying, that's not how reality actually plays out, because this guy is not doing this day in and day out. And until he does that, his value is not there. And the reason why he has any value is mainly because of just potential. Like he's a solid player, but to say a lot is it's gonna take a lot for you to trade him. That's a waste. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's a double-edged sword when you bring up, like, there's certain people that are going to say, if LeBron and those guys weren't there, THT would get the time to show how good he is. That's the one edge of the sword, right? Sure. The other side is, if those guys aren't there, we're not talking about THT. We are not. We would not even know who THT was if LeBron and AD wasn't pushing, so to speak, quote unquote, the agenda of THT and being a good player.
I was gonna say, I wonder if this is intentional. Like LeBron does this a decent amount of like, yo, this guy's next. This guy's the best player I've ever seen. Best player I play with. This guy has so much potential, and it's just like, just gearing them up towards a trade. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he does this. LeBron's a smart guy.
That would be pretty funny. I did see some memes about that, so I do think that may be what's happening here. But this is by far one where you go like, I do not understand what people are talking about. Like,
I'm on that boat with you. Next, real quick, I have 2 more that are a little small. So one, right now, with Kemba Walker, not in the Knicks rotation. Eventually, they're going to want to trade him. But there's, as at the moment, no interest league-wide in taking Kemba Walker. And that the league consensus is that Walker knees represent too much of a risk. And even if he plays, or even if it's too much a risk, even though that the situation that he has with New York and Boston is more just situational of that they can't play him, more than just his talent. What do you think about that?
It's tragic. It's tragic because it's like what we said earlier about Isaiah, and you mentioned it, is that like it really isn't the player, it's the fit, and the player just does not fit what the NBA is constituted as. And if he was at that superior offensive level that he was at a point in his career, he would still be in the fray. But because he's not, and he is at just said the word too, is the liability that he brings to being out there. It's the reason why he won't fit anywhere. He can't fit anywhere.
It's I mean, like you mentioned before, like we talked about it of, Isaiah Thomas and them, like these shorter players are kind of getting, as they get older and they have injuries, they're kind of getting just like wiped away from the league. and eventually they're going to be an distinct kind of player type that's in the league. And it's sad to see because we've seen them at their highs and they're amazing at their highs. But as time progresses, injuries happen. These guys just kind of don't have a place anymore. And then lastly, I thought this was kind of interesting. So of course I follow a lot of Knicks stuff, and from a good source that I actually believe for the Knicks, on Ian Begley, he mentioned that so far the Knicks are doing some trade talks, and they've actually talked about one, Miles Turner that we've been hearing about, two, Kyrie Irving, and three, the craziest one that I heard, Kristaps Porzingis. That there are trade talks, and they're in the talks, and he mentioned that Mark Cuban has come out and said that nope, we're not looking to trade Kristaps Porzingis. But the guy said he went back to his sources and confirmed that no, there has been some conversations here. What do you think?
All right. So I know you like your guy Ian. I actually got a bone to pick with Ian.
Okay.
I do think that Ian has the voice of the Knicks, right?
Got it.
Whenever it's outside of the perspective of the Knicks, it starts to get a little shaky with some of the things that he's saying. I do understand. I do think that there may have been some conversations about Kyrie with the Mavs, but to hear from sources from Ian tell you about the Nets, I was a little like, oh, I don't know about that, man. I don't know about that, man, because they're pretty tight-lipped. Knicks are pretty tight-lipped as well, too.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a few reporters that they'll throw a bone, right? And Ian Begley is definitely not that guy for the Nets. Woj typically right now has been the guy that gets the bone when the Nets are thinking anything. So I'm not concerned about whatever he says on the Nets front. But I do think that if he says that there was conversations that happened towards the Knicks, I can't refute that because I know he's close with the Knicks, and he's I just don't understand why the Nets would have conversation with the Knicks about Kyrie. I don't know what package that would look like and what they would send over. And it doesn't change the situation. It's literally the same situation. So you just wonder, why was that even why would either side pick up the phone to talk in that situation?
It's that's the one thing that's kind of been confusing about one, like anytime I hear about like with Kyrie too, like it just doesn't make sense to me. Like it's not gonna happen. So to me, that's just kind of like a name that, like you're saying, maybe they've talked about it. Maybe it's been brought up in a conversation, but I don't think there's anything serious there. I think with even with the Ben Simmons stuff, it runs into the same situation as Kyrie. Ben Simmons is currently, at least as last reported, unvaccinated, so he would not be able to play in home games. Is Ben Simmons as strict about it as Kyrie? Because Kyrie, he's doing it for he says for a specific reason. Is Ben Simmons that same guy? I don't know, but it's just that it's very strange to hear of like that being brought up. Even the Porzingis thing, that there's conversations there. What I wouldn't be surprised is, like you're saying, if Dallas is coming to New York and saying, "Hey, this guy did really well for you at one point. Maybe you want him back." And I do know that one, Dallas was actually very high on Julius Randle, and they did want Julius Randle at some point. So I wouldn't be surprised if they try to do a swap like that. And then as well, they're also very high on Nerlens Noel. And then they did try to sign Nerlens Noel that 1 year. And so like I wouldn't be surprised if those are kind of the conversations happening. But at the most part, the only name that is actually maybe could ever happen, I'd see, is the Miles Turner thing. I just thought that was funny, and I had to bring it up that like at least I believe like you're saying, I don't really follow Ian Begley too much for like the net stuff, but at least I do know like specifically, he does have a lot of good connections for the Knicks, so his Knicks news I do trust. But it's it's just funny that like these names are ones that are in conversations, and when most of them don't make sense.
Definitely.
Cool. That is all the news that I had for the weekly roundup. Do you have anything you want to say before we call it episode?
Christmas is coming. Would like to wish everybody happy holidays, whichever holidays that you guys, hold true to. But can't wait for that Christmas Day slate. Starting off, I know you're gonna be happy, Brian, with that rematch of the Eastern Conference first round matchup with the Hawks. Nets get to play the Lakers on prime time. We get to see a little bit of the Suns and Warriors again for another rematch. So I know we'll have another pod before that, but I am so ready for that. I am so ready to just sit down and bring in the real start of the NBA season and enjoy some food and some company.
Yeah, I'll add on top of what you're saying of, happy holidays to everyone that's listening. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to our pod, give us feedback and all that. We're having a lot of fun doing it, and we're going to keep on doing it. And what you mentioned about the Christmas games. Oh man, it's my favorite time of the year to watch these Christmas games. Now I'm probably going to be a little sad because I do expect the Knicks to lose against the Hawks. We'll see what happens, but I'm not optimistic there. But yeah, that's going to be a fun matchup to watch, and it's just overall Christmas basketball, the best type of basketball. It's so far it's been a pretty crazy year in the NBA world. And I'm looking forward to, like you said, the real start of it. And we get to see how, now we know what teams really look like, how they're going to move. Maybe we were getting closer to some trades. And overall, it's a great time. So,
hopefully we get some interesting Christmas jerseys too. I don't think so, but it would be interesting to see that come back.
Oh man, I love those Christmas jerseys. Those are so much fun. Even like the Christmas commercials that we would get and everything with the players, and those are always fun. But yeah, this was a fun episode. I really enjoyed it, and for the listeners, let us know what you think in the comments below. Check out all our Twitter stuff. Jeff is still killing it over there. And this was a good one. And this was episode number 13.
Peace.